It's good to be with you. I hope she won't mind, but I'm going to tell a story on Jenny Tran, who led worship this morning for us. I've known, Jenny has been like a sister in my world for many, many years at this point. And this, actually, I was thinking about it as we were worshiping this morning. It sort of actually goes with what we're looking at in our time together. We're going to talk about discovering God and a life with God in a deeper way. And I believe that, when we think about the idea of fasting, one of the things that we're actually talking about is being deliberate to remove something in order to make space or make room for a different experience of God's presence in life. And what I really believe is true, that when we do make space and when we do make room in some place of life, God is really faithful to show up. And we'll sort of through the morning look at the bigness of God and how amazing it is that the God who just spread galaxies around the sky like pepperonis on a pizza, right? It's just no big to him to create galaxies. And yet, this is the God who is with us. And I had this moment, I used to take some worship leaders to Estes Park, Colorado every year, and we'd retreat, we'd pray, we'd worship, we'd eat together, we'd spend time together in nature. And it was like one of the things that I just looked forward to every year. And I remember driving out to Estes Park, Colorado. Who's been to Estes Park? Anyone? Yeah, so tons of us. You know how there's the stream that goes through downtown Estes Park, and there's coffee shops and things like that alongside there. Well, a bunch of worship leaders were sitting at this coffee shop, and we spent a lot of time talking as we were driving out about what we were hoping, what we were expecting God might do in our lives as we were there. And so we're sitting in this coffee shop, drinking coffee with people that we really love and care for, and there's this stream going by, and it's just one of those moments where you just feel like, oh, how could it get any better than this? And I think somebody actually said, how could it get any better than this? And Jenny goes, well, it could only be better if I could just pet a puppy. and I go, well, Lord, you better bring Jenny a puppy. And I'm being facetious because, I'm dense, right? And a minute or so later, around the corner of this coffee shop that we're sitting at, there's this gal who just has puppies that walks up, and Jenny goes, can I pet those? Can I pet that dog? and I'm just in my mind, it's been seared into my mind for years that the God who creates galaxies also hears what his children would love in this world. And he just goes to crazy lengths to do these sweet little things for us in day-to-day life so that we don't start thinking that God is bigger than we could ever imagine, but he's indifferent about the small things of our life. He just refuses to let that be the case. And so as we do this series on the digital fast and we start creating space and room, if you haven't got one of those books, we've got books that actually go along with this series where you can journal and reflect and that kind of thing. And as we go through that, one of the things that we've started to find, just in the first week or so of doing this, I've heard stories from people who've gotten rid of some of the apps and things on their phone, and they've downloaded the app that tracks time that they're using on their phone. Some people have turned their smartphones into dumb phones and in order to create space. And then parents and kids are having fruitful conversations about the world because they're just a little more present. I've noticed that happening. And then my wife and I actually had a lengthy conversation this week about how there was something that happened during the time of COVID where our whole world got in this little bubble. But while our world was in that little bubble, the entire world outside of us got sort of translated to us through technology. And it did something really fascinating to our desire to be with people in person, to sit, to connect. It even changed a lot of the what we think of as normal or what we don't think of as normal in the world. Have you noticed that, like the internet is this sort of neutral thing, social media? It can be used for like the teachings of Jesus to find their way into the lives of people. And it can also be used for deeply broken things. Have you noticed this? And the way that we interact with social media, technology, those sorts of things, has a lot to do with the kinds of things we experience in life. And so even if you didn't jump in last week, I just encourage you, get one of those books, jump in with us. And I just believe this, that whatever room any of us makes in life, the Lord is really, really good, and he's really faithful. And when we make room, he shows up. That's one of the things that we strongly believe. I in some ways have been learning about making room in my own world in a pretty practical way. We are in the middle of moving houses. Anybody move within the last 5 years or so? Anybody after they moved swear that you would never do it again? Yeah. It's like you're just in the middle of it and you're like, how did we get all this stuff? But also because we're moving actually to a different house in the same neighborhood, we're doing it one little truckload at a time, kind of thing. And so we're at the point where half our stuff is in one place, half our stuff, or more than half our stuff is in the new place. And we're still trying to live at the old place. And this week was conference swimming for all of our kids. And so they're at swim meets, and Brooke's you got those kids, and by the way, make them food. And I'm going to take this kid to conference swim. And so I start opening up cabinets to cook dinner when I get home from work one night. And I'm like, she moved all the plates. There's no forks, there's no knives, there's no plates, there's no, our stuff isn't where it is. And what was interesting in the midst of this is I started to realize when something in my life is removed, the first thing that happens in me, this may not be true for you, but for me, is I get super annoyed. Because I got places and things go in those places. And I'm used to the things that are in those places. And then when you remove something you're used to in life, the first thing that you feel is serious discomfort. So many of us have rhythms as it relates to technology. We wake up in the morning, we check our email. First thing we do as we wake up. We wake up in the morning and we scroll through something and see what's going on in the world around us, or we turn on the news, or whatever the thing may be. So many of us have these spaces in life and these places in life that are spoken for, and then when they get disrupted, all of a sudden it's really uncomfortable, let's say. And so I started asking myself some questions throughout the week. I was reflecting on being in between places, and I started thinking, we've boxed up a lot of stuff. Of the stuff that we have removed from this house, what do I actually miss? And the answer was only a handful of we've done tons of boxing stuff up. There's only a couple things that even cross my mind that they aren't around. Which causes me to think, this lyric about uncluttering our world in order for God to have some space and room. I'm like, man, I thought I had gotten rid of a lot of stuff in this move, but I have a cluttered life. There's a lot of clutter to my world. There's a lot of clutter to the stuff that I have, to the noise that's in my world. I have a cluttered world. The second thing, after I started thinking about what do I actually miss, I started thinking through is there anything that I am annoyed by not having right now, and what does that say about my interaction with that thing? You start removing something and you go, you ever take a toy from a little kid? Well, try taking my cell phone from me. Something internally is but that's my stuff. And you realize, I have an attachment to this. And it may be out of place in my world or in my life. And then it started, in the space of not having stuff, You know what was interesting is that this other thing started to happen. I started to become grateful for things. There were certain things, like I packed up all my guitars in my studio at home, kind of like cleaned them up, cased them up, got them from where they were to the new house. And as I was like moving the instruments from one place to another, I started to reflect and remember like, oh, I wrote this song on this instrument, and our church sang that song together. And then other churches sang that song in the life of their church because like God blessed me with this thing, and it actually did connect my heart to him because I was able to make space and room for him using this thing. Some of our things are clutter, and some of our things actually do serve creating connection between our heart and God. And what fasting is, the removal of things. Cody sort of dove in, laid a foundation of this last week. It's the removal of something to experience another thing. Like at its foundational levels. There's a guy named Richard Foster who wrote a book, Celebration of Discipline. And Foster has a couple of quotes. He said, to fast is to identify our dependencies and free ourselves from them. More than any other discipline, fasting reveals the things that control us. Isn't that good? Like, in my life of following Jesus, I have fasted from food for extended periods of time in order to pray. That's been one of the spiritual practices that I've had. But I have to be honest, much harder than the removal of food for me is the removal of noise, media, stuff to interact with. Does that feel true to you guys? Like I am more comfortable with physical hunger than quiet sometimes. And, Cody, I think the week before we kicked off this series, Cody was talking about being in a room with a bunch of pastors and talking about the digital fast. And he goes, and the pastors all got their phones out to look at like who was spending how much time like connected in media. And he goes, and I won. I had the least. And it took everything within me not to go, I lost. I had the most interaction time of any of the pastors in the room with technology. I'm like habitually checking my email, my text, my phone, dinking around. And here's the extent to which it goes, because I don't actually want to I don't want to share this stuff as a guy who's like, oh, well, I'm basically monastic in my day-to-day life. That's just not the case, right? Like I am a fellow traveler in this series that we're doing. Like, when I can't sleep and I have a busy brain, many times I will turn something on to distract my brain so that I can sleep. I know, based on every piece of neuroscience that exists, that this is not good for me. But instead of taking that to the Lord and letting him calm my busy brain, many times I just go, well, Happy Gilmore 2's out. This sort of thing. When I cook, when I get home from a long day my job is people interaction all day. When I get home from that, many times I'll cook for the family, but I'll like put in headphones and listen to a podcast while I do it. And I had this where I came home from work. These moments as a parent where you like see yourself in your kid and you're like, I don't like what I'm seeing. I had this moment where I came home and my daughter Trudy had my headphones in her ears and she's like walking around the house like she's big stuff. And the cord is just dangling, connected to nothing. And I look at Brooke and I go, what is she doing? And she goes, she's being you. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? When I'm tired at the end of a long day, if I'm just sort of confessing, like how this functions in my world, and I just have a feeling I'm not alone, I will mindlessly dink around on my phone for 30 minutes, watching mama pandas sneezing, or people sharing Jesus, or pro athletes talking trash on each other, or people falling off of stuff. But just mindless sort of engagement with this stuff. And never at the end of it do I go, whew, I'm really filled back up. So I guess I'm saying all this to say, I'm not starting on third base in this series. Does that make sense? Like, I need this series as much as any of us need this series. Because if we passively interact with the technology and the things that are in our lives, it's just very rare that we do anything different than anyone else is doing. And to quote John Mark Comer, most of us are distracting ourselves into spiritual oblivion. And it's just, there's not enough room for the Lord to do the things he wants to do in so many of our lives. And so this week, I had to do some work travel. I had to drive to Salina, Kansas. Anyone from Salina, Kansas? I'm just curious. Anybody been to Salina, Kansas? Like, most people, Salina, Kansas is like a fuel stop on the way to Colorado or on the way to Kansas City. It's just one of the reliable places on I-70. Well, our company has a branch in Salina, Kansas, and I'm driving to Salina, Kansas, and as I pull out of the driveway, I go, you know what? This is it. This is good practice for me. I'm going to do this drive in total silence. No podcasts, no music, no anything. This is a perfect opportunity. I'm just curious, how many of you drive in total silence to work? Anybody in this? Okay, we got a couple. Yeah. Good for you. I get in my vehicle and immediately music, right? Or a podcast or something. Like, it's just, there's something to keep my brain busy while I'm driving, kind of thing. Much less on a road trip where I'm going to be in a vehicle for a long period of time. So I start driving. What would you guess the first thing that I experience is? Noisy, busy brain. You know, one of the things that's in our digital fast book, it encourages, if you're going to remove some of the noise and the clutter and make room for God, do this sort of spiritual practice of journaling as you do it. Track what's actually going on inside of you as you are doing this thing. So what I do is I take my phone and I set it next to me and I go, I'm just going to be aware of the sorts of thoughts that run through my head as I create space for silence. And the first place that my mind goes is this interpersonal, clunky interaction that I had with somebody at work where they got really defensive. And then as I was reflecting on, like, well, that was really weird. Like, that reaction they had was really weird. All of a sudden I had enough space and I go, God, do I do that in my life, like in my marriage? Do I do that toward people? And the Lord started to actually have some space and room to go, yeah, well, here's what the people around you experience, Steve, right? The next thing that happened is I started looking out at nature at the color green. You know how many different kinds of green there are when you drive across Kansas this time of year? There's a lot of greens. And it brought to mind, there's this guy named Rich Mullins who used to write music when I was a kid. And he had this song called The Color Green. I haven't thought of this song in decades probably. And the words of it, I was like surprised I knew the words of it. They like came up to the surface. And here's the words: be praised for all your tenderness by the works of your hands. The sun that rise, the rains that fall to bless and bring life to your land. Look down upon the winter wheat, be glad what you have made. Blue for the sky and the color green that fills your fields with praise. And I started tearing up, which is not normal when you're drowning out your thoughts with podcasts. It was like God met me in the color green because there was enough quiet to be met with. And then I prayed over the time that I was going to be spending with the people at the branch and said, God, I should pray about these meetings that I go to more often, that your presence would be in them. And it's like I prepared my heart. Now, this wasn't like purely this amazing experience because I also got interrupted by 11 phone calls. And there were moments where I got bored. But it's interesting, like, my lack of practicing silence, here's what I've found. When God meets us in moments of spiritual breakthrough, it's rarely, for me at least, like the heavens open and an audible voice says, Steve, here's what I want for your life. Or, Steve, knock it off. You know, like the Monty Python thing. Anyway, it's very rare that it's like that. You know what's more common is that you're going about the day-to-day of life and there happens to be a little space and you're like, oh, hello. God, you're even in this. There's a book called Practicing the Presence of the Holy that I've loved along the year that just talks about God in the everyday things. And one of the things as we look at this digital fast that we want to look at, and this is our sort of big scriptural idea of the day, is that there are things that we are trying to be or do in life that are really God's and God's alone. And there are things that God wants us to become in our life that are our job, they're our work. And so many times when we want to see how was the world designed or put together, the first place that we go is this story in the book of Genesis. And I want us to read this together about the way that who God is and who we are and how this thing was put together. Genesis 2, verse 15. The Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals that the Lord had made. And he said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? But I just got lost. And you must not touch it or you will die. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some of it and ate it. And she also gave to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. In the great redemptive story of God, this is where the thing breaks. But what does it mean that it breaks? Here's what's at the core of the enemy's story for us in this thing, is that you can't trust God. He's holding out on you. And his boundaries are not for your good. They're for your bad. God is withholding of good things, is what the serpent says. The second is, you know what? Wouldn't it just be better if you were just the same as God? If you weren't human, created by God, but if you were just the same as God and you could just decide what's good and bad in the world? Like moral autonomy. When we really think about it, it's insane. Like we know better than to dump oil in the gas tank and then go, well, how do these engineers know? Right? And yet so many of us, the way that we construct life, outside of the way that God designs it, is just doing that in place after place of life. The last lie is that the serpent tells is God is keeping you down, you don't have limits. There's a book by A.W. Tozier that I'd recommend you read called Knowledge of the Holy. It would be a beautiful book to engage during like a time where you're creating some space. But he talks about the character traits of God. 3 of them specifically that we'll look at today is God is omniscient, meaning he knows everything. God is omnipresent. He is everywhere and in all things. And that God is omnipotent. God is all-powerful. And I want to suggest that so much of what is strange about the way that we interact with technology in our day-to-day life is some way of trying to be more than we were actually created to be in one of those areas. Either we want to be all-knowing, or we want to be everywhere all at once, all at the same time, or we just want to be all powerful. We'll talk about what that looks like. In the first area of life, omniscience or all-knowingness. Have you guys ever, recently ChatGPT exists? Have you ever had something that you needed wisdom in life, and so you just asked ChatGPT? I look through tons of resumes at work every week. You can tell the ones that have been ChatGPT created for people because no one has ever called themselves adept at anything. There are these certain words where you go, oh my gosh. The way that we interact with this is we carry thousands of fragments of pieces of information in our world about who's on vacation in Europe and who's at what kid birthday party, who went to what concert, what restaurant they tried out, where there have been earthquakes or violence, what's going on in the life of the royal family, celebrities that are dating other celebrities. The problem with all this information of knowing about things that, truth be told, if technology didn't exist, you just wouldn't really know all that much about, and you'd be more engaged in the life that God has given you. The problem is it clogs our brain and detaches us from our own life that God has called us to live. We were not created to live beyond our limits and pretend that all-knowingness is actually a good target for our own life. The way that we interact. Have you ever been arguing with a friend about something and you just go, I'm asking Siri, and then Siri settles it? Yeah? You used to have to actually gain knowledge. Have you ever been interacting with knowledge that's on the internet and found that it wasn't true? This is the problem. When we try and live beyond our limits, we stop discerning what is actually useful knowledge or godly wisdom, and we just drink from the stream that's flowing into our life. The second place that we try and live beyond our limits, that we need to discover God, is in this omnipresence, this being everywhere at once. Physical locations, I would suggest, have become less relevant than ever before. Right? It's a strange thing about our world. People used to have to take the Oregon Trail to get from one place to another. I've hopped a plane and been in Vegas and Phoenix in the same day. Right? But even when in Vegas and Phoenix, I was able to FaceTime my children. There are some uses of technology that are redemptive, but for so many people, when you look at the actual thing of it doesn't matter where you are, people can get a hold of you at any time where you are, is actually not necessarily as helpful to us, because it gives us a sense of omnipresence. It doesn't matter if I'm in that town. If you want to text me and expect a text back from me in 60 seconds, I just need to be interrupted. The problem with constant interruption is you become less fully present wherever you are. Have you ever been eating? Okay, here's a sad thing. You ever been on a date with your spouse or someone you love, and the phone's on the table, and you keep checking the phone? Like you're talking, but you've got this portal to another dimension on the table. And so you're only halfway with people. It's interesting, like when you watch couples that are out at restaurants these days, and then both of them are dinking around on their phones while at a table with each other. See, the problem is we aren't supposed to be everywhere all the time, all at once. That's not how God made us. And if we do try to be everywhere all the time, all at once, we will never be truly in the place that God has put us now. Have you noticed in the life of Jesus, all kinds of things happen in the kingdom ministry on the way to somewhere or from somewhere? Jesus is interruptible, but not by things that are going on over there where he isn't. He seems to be interruptible on his way to or from places with people that God actually places in his path. And miracles happen when we actually are fully present in the place that we have been put. Which brings us to this last thing where we try to live beyond limits and need to discover God's presence. This omnipotence or all-powerfulness. Have you guys thought about how instant what I want and then getting it has become? Does anyone else have Amazon packages showing up every day at their house? Or is this just a Jones madness? I can click a button, and at my house comes a bulk order of toothpicks. Like it's just, if I think it up and I want it, I just put it in a cart and click a button, and then somebody is going to bring that thing to the place where I am. I am a button click away from having whatever I want whenever I want it. Have you ever watched the videos of little kids learning delayed gratification? I'll give you a donut right now, or two if you wait for 10 minutes. And then they leave the room and no little kid can control themselves. Adults have a version of that, and it's called Amazon. We find ourselves in debt buying things that we don't have the money for because of this impulse to have the world exactly as I want it without any friction. There is a huge difference between learning to play an instrument over the course of many years so that you can play a song or turning on a song on a Spotify playlist. Those are different things. Would you agree? There's a huge difference between pushing a button on your thermostat in order to get heat in your house in the winter, or going and cutting down logs and putting them in a fireplace. There's a huge difference between a frozen meal that goes into a microwave or growing a garden with food that doesn't have pesticides on it. The instantness, the trying to have what I want exactly as I want it, exactly when I want it, is in a way living beyond the limits of our humanity in a way that causes us. What happens when you order something on Amazon and then it's out of stock or doesn't show up? We throw grown-up tantrums. There is something about living beyond our limits in these places that's really actually not fruitful and healthy for our souls. And so we're going to spend this last few minutes doing this together. There's a handful of scriptures that we're going to slowly make our way through about God and his omniscience and omnipresence and omnipotence, who God is and what he's like, and then who we are and what we're like. And if you want to focus, I'll read these over you. You can close your eyes and let them sort of wash over you. Or if you're more like visual in the way that you engage, we'll put them up on the screen. But we're going to read a couple of scriptures. And just, here's the thing. Discovery, as it relates to fasting, discovery has to do with who is God and where are the places that I need to invite him into my world. As it relates to omnipotence, God knowing everything. Colossians 1:16 says this. For in him all things were created. Things in heaven, things on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. And here's a scripture about us from Isaiah the prophet in chapter 55. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, God. Neither are my ways, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. Let's just take a minute and pray that God speaks something around that to us. God, first we just want to make space and room to acknowledge that your ways are higher than our ways. Your thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And I just acknowledge personally, it was not in Steve that all things were created. It was in you that all things were created. Heaven, earth, the visible, the invisible. For from you and through you and for you are all things, God. And God, as it relates to omnipresence, speak to us as we read these verses. Jeremiah 23 says this, "Am I only a God nearby, declares the Lord, and not a God far away? Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord. Do I not fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord." And for us, the words of Acts 17, "From one man he made all nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands." God, I pray that you would speak to me that I was actually made for a time in a place by a God from whom nothing is hidden and none of it's on accident. And you put me in a neighborhood in the Northland to actually be there with the people that you placed around me. And I pray that you would move in my life, in the place and in the times that you've set out for me, and that I would be useful to you in the world. And God, speak to us as we read these about omniscience. Proverbs 15:3 says this, "The eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good." And Psalm 139 says this, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light will become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you, and the night will shine like day, for darkness is as light to you." God, I just pray, it is not ours to live beyond our limits. You are everywhere and in everything, and there is nothing that escapes your sight. And so for us, as we're tempted to live beyond the limits of life, I pray that we would discover, as we make space and we make room, I pray that we would discover your presence in our lives. And as the worship folks come up and we get ready to sing this last song, I just want to make room for a moment. And I would just say, God, speak to us. We've talked about a lot of things, a lot of ways that technology can get off and our humanity can get off and our worship can get off track. And would you just put your finger on one specific thing, one specific place in each of our lives where you are calling us to make room for you in the week ahead? And then, God, we have faith because you've done it time and time and time again. We have faith that you will actually meet us there. let's stand together and worship and let God seal some of these things in our hearts.